go. Okay, so my name's Desirae, and my daughter is Savannah Pillay. She is 26 years old now, and she used assistive technology. She used AAC. She can now use her mouth to speak, but she also sometimes chooses to use other ways to communicate, like gestures, facial expressions, signing, and sometimes she will use a communication book. So that's my personal background. My professional background is that I'm an assistive technology advisor in the disability sector, so helping people find the right technology to suit their needs, whatever their abilities are, to find the technology that matches that. So this particular conversation came about because we had an issue on our parent reality group where there was some misunderstanding about what it means to be nonverbal or what it means to be non-speaking. And I'm so glad that Carla is joining us. Carla is in bed at the moment, so she doesn't have her technology with her, but she is a person who uses technology and is non-verbal. As I'm assuming, Carla, that is okay to use, but please let your mom know to correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, great. So nonverbal, just to start off, nonverbal refers to or means when a person is not using words to communicate, and they're not speaking to communicate. They're using other ways. So gestures, facial gestures, expressions, their body, signing and assistive technology. So other ways to communicate. So not based on having words that they use to communicate. Non-speaking is they have the words likely, but they will not use their actual motor function to speak. They will use an assistive technology device, or a letterboard or a computer, another form of sharing thoughts, but not using their actual body. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, so both terms does not refer to the person's level, if you will, of understanding. Both terms simply refer to the person's expressive, how they express themselves, how they make themselves understood. And in both ways, we always presume competence. We always presume that a person has knowledge and understanding, and it is our job to find the way that suits them to express that knowledge and understanding. So it is very difficult for us to understand because we often come at using assistive technology or giving somebody a way to communicate as we know the answer. But actually we couldn't know the answer. We know what the options are, but how would we know the answer if we've never really experienced that ourselves? So it's really important when we think about this, how to help a person to communicate, is to understand that individual and understand their diagnosis, understand their personality and what their needs are. And then we find the right solution that matches them. Often people go into this and they hear of a solution and then they try and bend the solution to match the person or force the person to use a solution that is not actually applicable to them. So this whole field is quite broad in terms of what is available for people who are nonverbal or non-speaking, and there's lots of options available. Families don't realize that there are lots and lots of options available. So all of this falls under the term augmentative and alternative communication. So augment means that I will use things to help me to be understood. So I might have some words, some speech, or some audible, easily understood sounds or phrases, but then I use, like me, I'm using my hands, I'm expressive. I might use a device to help me in different situations, but an alternative system means that this person uses this for, he doesn't have a way to augment what he has. This is all he has, completely alternative. So a person who uses a device to communicate, and they are fully expressive on that device. So augment to help with what you have. Alternative is because you don't have something that helps you to be understood. Here's the alternative method. Is that making sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. I'm just going to pause. I see someone's waiting to be admitted. I'm just going to let John join. Hi, John. Morning, John.
Morning, Desirae.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be part of the group.
Pleasure. We have Fatima, who's joining us from Cape Town. She's a parent to Nasri. And then we have Marlene and Carla joining us from Krugersdorp. Carla is a person who uses assistive technology, and Marlene is her mom. So yeah, I've just introduced them quickly for you. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Okay. I've also invited my daughter. She's basically my working partner in terms of working for my daughter's support and recovery. So I'm John Stewart. I'm a dad of a young lady who was once verbal, but has regressed because of a lack of socialization. And we found that she needed regular stimulation. But in recent months, she started making a comeback. She can say John's name quite clearly. And she says some of the family members, she says her sister's name, her brother's name. And so, you know, those are milestones that we celebrate. And we're hoping to find out how we can support her to become more fluent as she once was. So
Okay.
Stacey will be joining us on the call probably as we speak. She'll probably connect onto the call in the next minute or so.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, John. I think I'll wait for Stacey to come, and then I'll just review what I've said about what is non-speaking and what is non-verbal, so that Stacey also gets that. So we're just talking about this umbrella term, augmentative and alternative communication. And augment is when we have some words, some phrases like your daughter does, and now she needs an additional to augment her communication, to broaden, deepen, widen her communication. Alternative is when somebody does not have words or phrases that they can easily be understood, and they use a completely alternative system for communication. So that's the umbrella term. And then under that, we have these, we have aided and unaided communication. And then we have the terms we're talking about today, nonverbal and non-speaking. So I'll go into that a little bit when Stacey joins. So at this point, excuse me, I'd like to ask parents, what is your burning question? Can we start with Marlene? Marlene, do you have a burning question?
Not at this stage. Just a little bit of background. Carla's a CP. She has a little bit of speech that we can understand. She's part of her disability is involuntary movements. So when she talks, obviously her lungs and her tongue and everything is part of the disability and the movements. So recently they had a baclofen pump inserted in her stomach, which suppresses or help the movements. But now we battle to a point where she is 32 years old. We back at a point where she has to sort of learn again how to use her tongue without the involuntary movements.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, you know, starting speech from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, today might help us a little bit, even though she's a AAC user, that it might, help us or give us some direction of how we could get. In the end, for all parents, we want our children to use their speech, obviously. So I thought today, if I could learn something or hear something that might be able to assist, and I was glad to hear that John's daughter also has a bit of speech. Maybe he can say if there's something that we can do just to get her back again to the speech functionality. So yeah, for us, that using the communication device, it's fine, but we don't want her to lose her speech ability, the little that she has. So
Okay.
yeah, that is my question.
Thanks, Molly. We will look at addressing that shortly. Fatima, burning question for you.
I don't actually have a question. I must also say that Nasri, he also has epilepsy. He developed at the age of a year. So he lost lots of, like they say, your brain cells die when you don't have oxygen to the brain. So he actually could speak. And he actually lost all of that speech as he was getting the seizures. So yeah, he completely cannot say anything. He'll make sounds, and he'll, like when he's crying or whatever, he'll say mom, and that will be the only thing. I do mostly the gestures. Thankfully, he's able to walk and point and things like that. So I use the gesture option for everything. I'll ask him, I'll speak to him normally and show mommy, what would you like? I'll give him the options and he'll point. So, I mean, you being the professional, I thought, you know what, if there's anything that I can learn from you or from the parents, actually, that would be great. I'm always open to learning, so I've been doing the gesturing for all these years, and it does work well, but we do find sometimes he's quite frustrated, and then there's nothing actually wrong with him, and then we'll, maybe you can see and sense when he actually wants to say something, but nothing comes out. And yeah, so that's sad, as a parent, but I mean, we are thankful, he's with us, he's alive. And but yeah, if I can just learn, if I take anything away from the session, or even nothing, but I'm learning something additionally from all of you. So for me, that's a positive. So I don't have, I'm just open to learning something new from the session. I can't, ask you specifically,
That's fine.
how can I better his ability to gesture? I mean, we don't know if he'll ever be able to speak, and I'm fine with that. We've made peace with that. But yeah, if besides gesturing and what I've been doing, perhaps is there anything else that I can also try that would make things a bit easier? I think ultimately, yeah, that would.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Fatima. That is a good direction to take this conversation in. So thank you for that. John, your burning question.
So is it Nasri that just spoke?
It's Fatima, and her son's name is Nasri.
Oh, okay. Hi, sorry about that. Fatima, you've kind of mirrored of much of our experience with Lauren. Seizures as well, severe, mostly resistant to drugs. So the ongoing seizures have certainly taken a huge role. Interesting thing is, when Lauren was at a younger age and we were able to get her seizures controlled completely with a ketogenic diet, she blossomed. And that's when the speech came in. She was able to learn to read, write. She could count, she could converse. And so it's definitely the seizure that is robbing her of that ability. Later years that we've lost a lot of that control, she's now trying to make a comeback. And the question is, how do we support that? So I've been to a conference, they've spoken about stimulating various parts of the brain through exercises. And those exercises are things like crawling on all fours and trying to get to as many steps as possible to stimulate these parts of the brain. They talk about the limbic brain, and there's one or two other areas. I've still got the notes. The other thing we do, but I think it's the inconsistency. So I'm going to come to the point because Fatima shared so much that is similar to ours. How do we implement a process because of the inconsistency of availability in the family that helps Loden on the daily basis to be able to practice, even if it's at a basic level? So if she has a foundational program that we can, whether it's a mum, a sister, myself, and then as we measure her, can we then take her to like the next level and the next level? Because I believe as she improves, she may even be able to sort of help herself. And we're looking for that aha moment when she can start recognizing things in books. She could identify 40, 50, 60 pictures in a book, whereas now a lot of that has disappeared. But we found that was also something that helped us. So they identified her as a visual learner. So is there perhaps something in the essence of her learning style and the other young people that we're referring to in terms of what is their learning style that we could somehow get them assessed, tap into that path, and then see if we can get them onto the road to recovery.
Okay, thank you, John. There's someone on an iPhone. Oh, I think I've lost them now.
That must be Stacy.
Okay, I think she dropped off. Okay, if she enters again, I will admit her and I'll hear from her. But okay. So let me start with chatting through some of the points everybody touched. I think it is important to just recap quickly what is non-speaking and non-verbal. So non-speaking means that a person has the oral motor ability to speak, but they do not speak for various reasons that may be that is to do with how they experience speaking. So people who are autistic are very often non-speaking. They have the words, they have the language, but they will use alternative means to communicate. So using a letterboard, writing, typing, an assistive device. So that's non-speaking. Non-verbal means that for whatever reason, they are unable to use their body to speak. So they will then use an alternative device and that alternative system, whether it's books or pictures, to communicate. So non-verbal is different to not having the words. And I hear as I'm saying that even Carla had to learn the words. Am I correct, Marlene? She had to learn with pictures. Did she use pictures to communicate?
Yes, she attended the Westland School for Cerebral Palsy up to grade 5, and then she struggled, with the test. So we went through the normal learning of grade 1, grade 1. Obviously, it took much longer. We used the alphabet and attached pictures to them, like A, apple, B, ball, but with that, we had to, once she knew A was for apple, we had to rethink another word for A. So it's not only apple, B, so that we can extend her understanding and her speech. But yeah, we started with pictures. What is wonderful, there's a wonderful website for AAC that has communication boards, and that would help maybe John in this part. It's printed seats where it's a little stick figure that does a certain thing, like jumping up and down, and then you teach your child this is jumping or skipping or sitting or eating. So we had to do all of that when she started. Now at this stage, she's fully bilingual, trilingual. Actually, she's speaking Tswana as well, or communicating or understanding Tswana, and she's reading biographies. Of she's busy with Sia Kolisi's biography. So with the years, you just have to practice and practice and practice, and especially with the children that are that has a little bit of a mental disability as well. You have to sort of display or show them as a person. So I was jumping up and down and showing her, this little girl, this thick little girl is jumping up and down. I'm jumping up and down. And then she got the idea of that's jumping. So yes, we had to go through the pictures for many, many years. When you walked into my house, everything had a name on it: a door, a cupboard, the kitchen, the TV, everything, a chair, the table, everything had words on it, and a little display, picture, and then the actual thing. So that is what we did, go through all those processes to get her to this point. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that means also what we need to do is understand the differences in our children's abilities to learn. In Carla's case, she was wired for learning language in that way. And that was the solution that worked for her. Sometimes,
yes.
Sorry, go ahead, Molly.
No, I'm just confirming.
Okay, yes. So there are people have different ways that they learn, different neurological issues that affect language, their development and understanding of language. So what works for one person may not always work for the next person, depending on what their neurological challenges are, or even their physical challenges at times, and or physical challenges. So what Marlene was referring to there in terms of pictures, let me give you an example of that. Marlene, am I correct? Is it something like this? Oops,
yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So this is a program called Boardmaker that you can make, you use to it's a graphic representation of words for people who use AAC, and who need the support of a visual in order to understand the meaning of the word, in order to gain understanding. Sometimes they won't even gain understanding of the written word, but the actual picture will be their communication system. So my daughter, for example, cannot read or write. She's gained some words, but not enough to string a sentence together on any level, but she communicates very effectively using pictures. So she has a system that's also a dynamic display on a computer. Carla probably has the same system. And what that means, there are thousands and thousands of pictures and words in that system that if a person presses on dressing, it would go to the next page of options for dressing. And then there could be socks and shoes, and the person could press, I want socks, shoes. So that's a dynamic display system. So this would be a paper-based, and then you could have one on a computer. But how all of that fits together is the question, and how do we decide what a person will benefit from? So before I continue, I'm assuming it's Stacy on the iPhone. I just want to welcome you. Sorry, we didn't get to you earlier. Hi, Stacy.
Hi everyone, I'm John's daughter, Lauren's sister. Sorry, I'm just listening in.
Okay.
So I'm doing it while I'm walking as well. So that's why I just muted myself and I've just been listening.
Perfect. Thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, please
I
stop
definitely
us.
will. Thanks. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so to what Marlene was saying, so in terms of Carla and having some words and now wanting to regain those words and to regain speech. So Carla is a person with cerebral palsy and she has lots of involuntary movements, which means that she also struggles with her body being stiffer at times, more often, I'm guessing, Marlene and Carla. The more excitable.
Yes, the more she gets excited or wanted to express or pronounce a word, the movements just becomes so erratic, and
yes.
yeah, and simple situations stresses her, and then the speech goes completely.
Yes. So I totally understand that. And Carla, you can ask your mom to correct me if I'm wrong. One of the challenges for somebody with a physical disability whose body gets tired from all of the movements and who has to work really hard in terms of sitting and controlling their device and communicating, the more words, the more understanding, the more knowledge that person gains, the speed of which they can share that can sometimes impact their movements. And so using their mouth to communicate can become actually more challenging the more they have. Because when I want to speak faster, I can speak really, really fast and I can keep going and it's not going to stop and the rest of my body is fine. Do you see the difference?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And that's exactly what happens. And what we also experience with that is the more she battles to express the word, the more we want to finish the word for her.
Yes.
Which is one of the worst things that you can ever do. And I get reprimanded by Carla so many times to say, stop, wait. For me to answer, so that's very true.
Yes. So I understand you really well, Marlene, because I do that often to Savannah, and Savannah also stops me and she says wait, and I have to wait. So what I think one of the things you need to think through as a family is whether the pursuit of verbal speech, considering the physical toll it has on Carla's body, is as valuable as waiting and letting her finish what she needs to say the way she needs to say it. So having said that, Carla, I'm apologizing to you in advance. We are not, sadly, us non-disabled people are not wired with enough patience, and it is our biggest challenge. It's my biggest challenge too, to slow down enough to wait. And so I do apologize, but then Marlene, that is the alternative, because the more pressure the body is under, the more it will hurt itself in a sense by just stiff muscles, just that overexertion. And so that's why parent support groups exist, because I speak very openly about my struggles to be the right communication partner for Savannah, when sometimes I can just take it from her and do it for her, or I can just say it for her. And it's an ongoing challenge. She's 26. I've been doing this professionally and personally since she was 6 or 7. So it's a long time and I still struggle with it. But I've also gotten better with my expectations of her in terms of understanding what it's doing to her body. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And Carla nodding.
If it's a comfortable, if it's comfortable for Carla, if it's right, it doesn't cause any associated issues to pursue oral motor therapy for speech, if all of those things work and make sense, and it doesn't, there aren't any, it doesn't hurt Carla in any way, then it's a great goal to have, to be able to communicate. And the thing to remember also for those of us with older children is that our children are aging as we are. And so it's really important to remember that the same things that our body is subject to in terms of aging, our children are also subject to. But because of what they've already been living with in terms of their disability, sometimes they're going to age a little faster than we are. So like, we wouldn't ask, and Carla, I'm sorry for this analogy, so I apologize, but I wouldn't ask my 65-year-old mom to work harder at something because I understand her age. So I will look at a way to slow myself down and to help her or to provide her support. And so I think us as parents also need to think through it that way. Is that helpful?
Yes, very much, very much.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm going to move to Fatima's comments about her son, Nasri. So Fatima, in terms of Nasri's diagnosis with the global delays, autism and epilepsy, I understand that is a lot to deal with and to kind of find your way in with all of that information. But here are some things to say. In terms of him using gestures, that is a fantastic place to begin. That is awesome that he has gestures. And often what we look for people is an intent to communicate. I meet a lot of people where there's no intent to communicate that is understood by me. So they have an intent, but it's not the intent that I understand as communication. So I would struggle to find the right way to help them. But Nasri has an intent to communicate that we can understand. So gesturing is fantastic. I would consider also building on that and looking at a sign language system, because the beautiful thing about signing is that you can do it anywhere. You can do it anywhere. If you have a book like this or a device that you want to use to communicate, you can't take that into the shower. You can't take that into the pool. You can't, there are limitations. So we always say what we encourage people to have, it's not one or the other. It's everything and more. So my daughter and a lot of people who use AAC, Carla is one of them too, what we call multimodal communicators. So they will use gestures, signs, facial expression, body language, a communication low-tech book, a computer, whatever one or two or all of those, whatever of those works for them, so that they can make themselves easily understood. So it's something to consider. And then, are you with a speech therapist, Fatima?
Yes, I independently did speech therapy when he was a bit younger, and then we just incorporated what he was like assessed. We also did some I think it was John that mentioned about stimulating the brain.
Yes.
So I also did sort of like inclusive therapy, where you do all the stimulations and for cognitive ability. So I've been trying to do all those therapies and incorporating them for the sensitivity of the skin and brushing of the teeth,
Okay.
the challenges that autism kids sort of deal with. So I've tried to incorporate different gestures, but I was so excited when Marlene mentioned about, I do know about like the books and the pictures, but Nasri, he sort of, he doesn't want to. It's almost as if, Mom, I'm not at school type of thing, and he ignores me completely. So I've tried doing the pictures, and because he likes like watching cartoons, and so I've printed the pictures, and I will ask you, okay, so choose which one would you like. So we try to do that, but
Okay, I want to interrupt you
I think
there.
we need to incorporate it into the daily life.
Yes.
But he's kind of like not. I don't know if at that point he wasn't able to come on board with, is there something, maybe I definitely should try it again. But at the time, you know, when I was learning about it, he wasn't interested. He kind of just ignored me. It's as if learning is for school, mom, and I'm just chilling type of thing.
So let me help you on that point. So a typically developing baby, a baby who's going to develop language, when they do something, we respond. We will say, if the baby got the bottle, you picked up the bottle, you're shaking the bottle. We give meaning to the action. We never look at a baby and say, this is a bottle. There's water in the bottle. Shake the bottle. Did any of you raise your kids like that?
No. No.
We respond. Yes.
Yeah.
So our kids investigate and we respond. I think it is a typical child gets 4,500 or something words in a day or week or something like that before they communicate at 18 years, 3 months. I'll actually find the stats for you. So if I want my child to use signs, gestures, communication, book, a device, how many hours of that do you think I have to use before I ask to show me? A lot. So we actually never come at language from the basis of teaching. This is not learning. We're not teaching. We are opening doors and seeing which doors our children walk through and what works for them. It should be a gentle approach. It shouldn't be an outcomes-based approach. There aren't levels to this. It's just language. It's just communication. And every person will lock onto how much they need. For me, I don't want to learn about Star Wars. I have no interest in Star Wars. So if you present Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, I'm going to likely choose between Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. So in a similar way, when we present different options for our children to communicate, we cannot come at this as if we know, because we don't know. We don't know. We are not a person with epilepsy, cerebral palsy, autism. We don't actually know what is going to connect. So the job is to open all the doors, gently allow yourself gently to learn. You're actually learning, and present that as an option. So like Marlene was saying, her house had all the words in it. My house had all the words. I had pictures and words. I had a communication book for Savannah, and I would sit on the chair and point at the word and picture chair. I would, if we went out, now if we used the picture and the word chair at home, we would need to have that available somewhere else, because she needs a chair wherever we go. And so I would have a book with those words and say, do you want to sit on the chair or do you want to sit on the grass? Because I'm going to sit on the chair. And then give options like that, a realistic option that you would give somebody else. So that's how you learn. When Marlene and I were doing this for our girls back then, it was suitable. It was, we didn't have more knowledge in terms of how we use pictures and words. Now, all these years later, there's been more research done. And actually now the best standard practice is to have a robust communication system, lots of words, using all parts of speech. So you would have a picture for the word the, you would have a picture for chair, you would have a picture for cushion, you would have a picture for pull or push. The chair is, the cushion is on the chair. Those would all be visually represented. And that's because, the reason is because so many of our children learned to just look at objects, chair, desk, table, pictures of mom and dad, pictures of whatever they were watching, clothing items, food items, music items. But they might have had the ability to learn language and literacy, but because we didn't believe that, and we were presenting, and it's what we knew at that time, we were presenting just what we thought was important that we wanted to know about them, they didn't have the ability to learn literacy and language. That has now changed. Now we believe we give children thousands of words in either a book format or in a dynamic display format, and we go from there. We build from there. So Fatima, what I want you to think through is how it's really the implementation that you need more understanding on, because your son could benefit from gesture signing and a visual display system. And it would be helpful to maybe see a speech therapist again and start working on it from that point of view. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I get where you I get where you're going with this. Yeah, I think at the time, you sort of in a hurry, as a parent,
Yes,
and then
I'm too.
you you kind of like you just want and I think it's all just about repetitive and just being patient. So
it's a very slow
Yeah.
process sometimes for some children, and then I've seen other kids where it's gone really quickly. And sometimes it depends. We can't say whether it depends on how much the parents or the family or the school was implementing, how much the person's diagnosis played into that, how much they were going through. I've had people who just seemed they were unable to be engaged, but really it was because they had a toothache and they were struggling for a toothache for months and months, and were probably saying their hands were paining, because when I eat, what I process is the pain when I eat. So it must be this thing I'm seeing, not the thing I'm not seeing, because sometimes some children cannot actually understand where their pain is coming from. And that then works out into how they will react to whatever they are being presented with. Because if your brain, you think about it, guys, any of you been in extreme pain, can you actually be bothered with anything else around you at that point? And I'm not saying that's always the case, but I'm saying there's so many factors that go into it. But really important, Fatima and Marlene and John, this is not a guilt trip. We don't know what we don't know. That's the important thing to remember. You don't know what you don't know. When you know, we know what the best standard is, to have all the words all the time and as many options, but that's the best standard. And we are here as parents, and we are also limited in our ability to grasp knowledge and to become something that our children need. And so we also have to be gentle with ourselves. Does that make sense to you, Fatima?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yes.
That helps a lot. Thank you.
So Fatima, remember this, when you are thinking through this, you don't start with everything in every option. A lot of parents will go into Google and find everything that I've said. You take one thing that is realistic for you and that won't be challenging for you, and you implement it in the best time of day for your child and the best option that he is likely to respond to. So if it's already gestures, then maybe signing is the next option, and or maybe a graphic representation of the gestures he uses. So if he has a gesture for eat, then maybe eat is I think this is the sign for eat, and then a picture for eat. And then you've got 3 options for something he's already using. Then to work on the implementation of that isn't too challenging for you, because you know the gesture, you know what he's saying, and now you can just help him broaden that. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Because now I'm thinking, he loves bath time. So if he actually understands us, it's amazing. I know that he has global delay, and he's 16 going on 17, but we don't actually know his age. He definitely is a baby as such, but he understands us quite. It's amazing that he can understand the simple things. Come, let's go and bath. And then he'll rush to the bathroom, or I'll say, come, let's go for a ride. Are you going with mom? He'll rush to the car. So I know what you're trying to say. So sort of like bath time, I'll have a picture of bath, and so I get where you're going with this. Thank you so much. That helps a lot.
Pleasure. And at the end of this, I'm going to send you guys some links of videos and resources to look at. Okay. All right. I'm going to move to John. John, you spoke about Lauren and having had regression with the epilepsy, and now looking for ways for her to communicate effectively again. And you also asked in the chat, do you believe inclusion can support verbal and cognitive rehab? Yes, the minute you're in a social setting and community, definitely, in any way, shape or form, definitely. So from what I've already said, is there anything you want to pick up before we get into your discussion? Yeah.
So what I found is that when Lauren had the, this blossom effect in her life, up until then, she was able to communicate, there was gaps, but she was pretty independent, and had already displayed skills. But we found that this aha moment happened when she entered an inclusive school. Then it's like the world opened for Lauren. So I push back on what we call special needs centers in the view, and I don't mean to offend anyone. It's akin to the blind leading the blind. So you're in a community where the whole group are verbally or intellectually or physically challenged, and so nobody can really be a peer model or facilitate learning to learning. She's in a center now where some of the individuals are high function, and I find that she's almost back into that situation. So Lauren will connect. And in school, we sometimes find a student doesn't connect with the teacher. They go to the next grade the next year, and that's in mainstream. And all of a sudden, boom, they're an Einstein. So in the same, in Lauren's way, even in around family members, there's some people she connects with. And when she's in that space, she flies. So on that note, are you aware of any environments in which there is some access to an integrated, inclusive group that allows, whether it be on a support basis? Because I believe even if she had that maybe once or twice a week, or as often as was possible, there would be a huge benefit there. Because sometimes she looks at me and she's like, Dad, get with the program. You've been on my case with this, and she literally gets bored. And then somebody else comes and visits, and she's totally enthralled with him, and you can see she's more responsive. So that's the one element. The other element I just wanted to touch on is, so that's the inclusive side, but in terms of these other therapies like cranial sacral therapy, for example, would these therapies be beneficial? So we're working on the dietary issue because of the gut-brain association. So we can clear away things like brain fog, get her more clearly focused, because she can and does respond. If I say, Lauren, let's go and bath, sometimes she'll hesitate, sometimes she'll hold back, but she knows what you're talking about. If you say, are you hungry? She'll say, yes. And sometimes she'll say, juice. And I know that she's thirsty, And the other thing is, she has a love for Joel Osteen. Okay, so Joel's a dude, he's a man, I come second. But when she sees Joel, that response is just quite incredible. And from time to time, she'll say his name. So, there will be a moment where I can reinforce and say, there's Joel, what's his name? And get her to mouth that. So I'm kind of reaffirming what everyone has been saying, and in fact what you're saying, but my point, I think, is directed into this inclusive space.
Yes.
How would our kids benefit by being in an inclusive environment, or where can they access an inclusive environment so that they've got other kids who can say, Lauren, come, let's go and play, or whoever the individual is, and then they're in a peer group space as opposed to an adult to a younger person learning. That's essentially my point here.
Yes, so I've actually had that question recently too, and it's an ongoing discussion. So the challenge is a couple of things. Firstly, the world we are living in, and it's not just South Africa, it's really across the world, is becoming more polarized. And where everybody is talking about inclusion and acceptance, equally, there is a polarization. And then also the challenge you have is that all of us are now part of this technology revolution that this age is in. So generally the dynamic in the world is faster, best, better now. So it's changing how we all think. How often have you arrived at a place or a meeting and was upset that somebody was late? Because our standard now is now. It's now, everything's instant. It's a microwave world. So we're being cultured into that way. And then those of us who need to make an income and live in that world are doing that, but we're also aware that we have to slow down enough for our children. And so we have this challenge now of where's the halfway mark? And it's a real big problem because it's hard to create an inclusive society when we're moving at this opposite way almost sometimes. So in a lot of the adult care facilities and a lot of even the general care facilities, one of the challenges we have even in schools is when children use assistive technology or have some words and need an augmentative system, their peers are also have their own challenges and struggles and are not always equipped to understand that I have to wait for this person. So what happens is in a group dynamic, unless that communication is facilitated by a speaking person and a person who understands the group dynamic, it actually doesn't always work really well. In order for it to work, we need to have more opportunity for children to socialize and play. And actually, how many of us learned or want to communicate the knowledge we have from school? Who wants to talk about what they learned in history lesson or what they learned in maths? And a lot of our kids, their learning and their speaking time is happening in school. It should happen. Their communication time, whatever they're using to communicate, should happen at bath time. It should happen on the playground. It should happen with the people I love the most. It should happen at the time that I'm most relaxed and I'm most happy. And our kids are under so much pressure to learn we're racing to therapy, we're racing to school, we're racing to whatever. So we are on the fly trying to implement things and expect them to communicate. So this is not the answer. Unfortunately, it's the challenge. The places I've seen it work best is, unfortunately, again, it's families. Parents end up doing it for their kids. So they end up joining the local, whatever it is that exists for them, scouts group, soccer club, church, temple, mosque, whatever it is, and then they are advocating for the inclusion of their children. Then they end up doing the training in that space. They end up becoming the support. It's quite funny. It's like, I was saying to somebody, it's like you are bleeding. You are the one bleeding. You go to the hospital for help, and then you have to tell the hospital, it's okay that I'm bleeding. Here's how you fix me. That's unfortunately the role of a parent of a child with special needs or a disability in this country. So yes, John, inclusion, my own daughter does not, and Carla, please forgive me for saying it this way, but I do say it to Savannah, so I have her permission. My own daughter does not shut up for 5 minutes at home. She talks constantly and talks about a lot of things. And then when we go out, she's much quieter in certain environments. But we've continued going out, continued inviting people, continued attending things, asking for our accommodations, advocating for her, saying, like at weddings, I can use a wedding as an example. She can't, Fatima, my daughter's CP and autistic, So from a sensory point of view, it's very overwhelming for her to be at an Indian wedding because the colors, the smells, the sounds, the food, it's all too much. Then she also uses a wheelchair. So often a lot of the places are not wheelchair friendly. So what I do is I ask, which is the quietest part of the ceremony? Sometimes in a traditional Indian wedding, it could be the night before. So we'll go the night before with her. And I will ask family, I phone up and say, I'd love to come, I'd love to be there. You know, Savannah can't sit with people that she doesn't know. Can you make sure that we are all sitting together? Is there space that we can be comfortable in? And I ask the bride and the groom, my child cannot come up front and wish you, would you mind coming to the back? And people have said yes. I've had people that have said yes. I've had people that have thought I'm crazy and have ignored me, and that's fine. I don't go to their functions anymore. But Savannah has now built her own community, and she has got friends that come over to have tea with her and not with me. She's part of the prayer team at church. I am not part of the prayer team at church. I don't want to be on the prayer team at church. She is involved in the prayer team at church. How she does that is she can't speak in front of people. It overwhelms her so much. So Carla, while you have the involuntary movements, Savannah just gets overwhelmed and she has to look down because it's too much for her senses. So the day before church, she sends a voice note to the lady, her friend at church. And when we get to church, that lady holds her hand and she speaks out Savannah's prayer. Savannah's not always clear on the phone. So I ask Savannah, do you want me to repeat that to that person, or should we wait to see if they understand you? And she will decide whether she thinks they'll understand her or not. And then they ask back for a clarification to her, not to me. So that person will say, Savannah, did you mean da-da-da-da-da-da? And Savannah will confirm or not. It really takes me 5 minutes, to be very honest. And the value of that involvement and engagement for Savannah and that team is huge. So they will invite her to things. And let me also say, she's 26. This just happened in the last 3 years. And it happened because I was determined. I said to them, went to church. I hadn't been in church for a while. I was determined that she was not on the table, meaning I didn't care whether they interacted with her or not. But we were going to be part of this community. If they didn't want us there, they were going to evict me. They had to send me a legal notice. That's what I decided. So I was going to go and I was going to keep asking for my accommodations, for what was fair for her. And I didn't want to fight with anybody. So I went in very gently, very calmly, and kept explaining the same thing. And now she's fully included and she's got all these strange words. She's learning words like, which I wouldn't probably have taught her, futsack and stupid and other words, which, you know what, it's appropriate. So when I told her brother and sister, why is Savannah saying this word? And they turned around and said to me, because she has the right to. And you as the parent have the right to correct, but she has the right. So her siblings and her friends are teaching her some interesting words at the moment. And sometimes, you know, parents, sometimes she uses it correctly, sometimes she doesn't. But whenever she uses it, it's an opportunity for me to put it into context for her. It's also an opportunity to engage with other people and say, when you say this to Savannah, it's lovely. Like she was invited to a sleepover, but she was invited to the sleepover in September. And she was invited in September, the sleepover is in December. So between September and December, guess what my life is like about hearing about the sleepover repetitively. So while she can communicate that, that's a huge frustration for me. And so I had to say to the person, if you're going to plan something with her, I appreciate it, I want you to, but September to December is a lifetime in my house. And so if you want to do something with it, it's got to be a short period of time, like a week maximum. Don't do months. And that person took it very nicely and they apologized. They came and explained it to her and they made a calendar. They are counting down with her. So John, you are 100% right. It is inclusion that opens up our kids' worlds, that brings new words in. That also takes the load off us because more people can communicate. It's really comes down to, do they want to? Do they believe you don't even have to believe in my child as a person, but do you believe in her right to be included? And I feel often I don't have to have the answer of exactly how that's going to be, but if you as a person believe that my child should be included, then help me figure that out. And that to me is the beginning of how it gets easier. So yeah, the long of that, but does that help you, John?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the gap still remains, Desirae, is access to. So I find that in the general format, like I tried to engage with our church, and there was pushback. Not in a nasty way, but they didn't quite know. And no matter how you proposed it or suggested it, it was like, look, we have a group, for children with challenges, and they are here, and it's like, okay, that's where she's been all her life. We're trying to change that.
Mm.
I'm trying at the moment to engage with people on a community level, and I've spoken to a number of ladies who do community. I'm saying, do you have young ladies that have got nothing to do? They come out of a challenged community, they got no career, no possible foreseeable hope, and see if they can come in to the space of just being a friend as a starting point.
Yes.
And then look how you can nurture and grow them. And who knows, they can become future therapists, whether it be occupational speech or social workers, or just lending themselves to be in that space so that they are there. And they may not realize it immediately, but their role would be so invaluable. It seems to be a bit of a struggle, ironically, tapping into that. And then the other pushback is from parents saying, do I really want my kid to be sort of stuck in that space? So I think from an advocacy point of view, there's a huge need to create awareness. How can we help other young people to become bigger than themselves? Have they got leadership skills? Have they got something in them that would make them feel so much more of a human being, that they've touched somebody else's life who's in a more challenging situation, and they've achieved something. So it's a kind of a ongoing or conversation that needs to be done. But yeah, in Lauren's life, I see that as quite an enormous gap, because when Stacey left home after she graduated, her social circle disappeared, and we never factored that into the equation. So when her social circle was at home, Lauren had like about 20-25 friends who she knew by first name. They all loved and lapped her, and she even had special guys in the group, Kerwin and Jason and whatever, and she would just, melt when she saw them. And there was this engagement, there was this interaction, and that fed her in so many different ways. But the minute that scaffolding was gone, it was like, oh, damn, what do we do now? How do we fill that gap?
Yes.
So,
yeah. It's a ongoing issue for all of us as parents. And I think one of the challenges is to accept that age appropriately, our children won't always fit. And that's not all of our kids, but many of them who are dependent on us for care and to be the one that predicts their safety, that knows how to keep them safe. That is the long-term challenge for us. Getting back to what you were saying about including other people, giving them an opportunity, other young people. I think I have a lot of friends who are actually adults with disabilities, and their challenge is that don't choose me because I'm just the alternative to make you look better in your life. And it's something I learned just engaging, and I have had a lot of bad social experiences. And I remember saying to somebody once, I don't get Savannah out of bed every day to make you feel better about your life. She's here because she wants to be here, and she has every right to experience this the way she wants to experience this. And where I found it helped me a little bit was that sorry, is that mine? No, that's not mine. Sorry. What I found helped me, and this is also financially a challenge, but if you can do it once in a while, I think it's hugely helpful. John's gone. I'm just going to wait Let's see if he comes back in. We've got about 14 minutes to go before we end the session. So as soon as I finish this comment, when John comes back, I'm going to ask parents to just comment and sisters to comment before we end. Here's John. Let's see. Yes. John, can you hear me? Are we just connecting? John, are you back?
Yeah, sorry, Desirae. It was
Okay.
Lauren's brother calling from overseas. We have a regular date, but it's fine.
Okay.
I can call him.
We're going to be done in a few minutes.
Yeah.
What I wanted to speak to was, this is one idea that helps me. When people, I used to be on a board at a school and part of the team that did the interviews. And when people came into the interview and they say, I just love these kids and this is my calling and I really know that God wants me here, their CV always moved to the bottom of the pile. And the reason is because I love my kid, because I didn't choose this, but I love my daughter. But my love doesn't extend my stamina. It doesn't extend my ability to be patient. At some point I get worn out. So if the basis is somebody's love for our children, they are being unrealistic. And what we have found is that people who would rather be paid for their time and their skill are actually more effective. So what I did for Savannah for a couple of years, I think it was about 2 years only in the 26 years, is I had an au pair. I had 2 different au pairs, 2 completely different personality girls. And we went through an interview process with them, young ladies that were studying. And one was more, she preferred being quieter at home and doing small things with Savannah, like making tea or making a sandwich. And the other one, she actually pushed me out of my comfort zone. And she came to me, she would come home and do Savannah's hair and they do makeup and all the girly things and talk about boys and watch romance movies and all of that. And she came to me the one day and she's like, I'd like to take Savannah for a haircut. And I was like, what do you mean take her for a haircut? She was like, put her in the car, take her to the salon, and then we're going to go for milkshake. And then I was challenged. I was like, okay, I'll drive you guys there. And she's like, no, without you. And so I budgeted on like, I think she would spend an hour and a half with Savannah. That day was like 4 hours. It was the best 4 hours of Savannah's life. We did that regularly. And eventually this young lady phased out because her life was changing, but she prepared Savannah for that. She said, I'm going to, get married and I have to move away. They're still friends, they still chat, but she changed me and she let me realize that there are people in the world that are willing to go the extra mile. But unfortunately, payment is needed. And then also, fortunately, I think in some ways I've learned now that Savannah's 26, I prefer it that way, because if I don't like you, and if you are pushing all the wrong buttons with my child, I can fire you. And when it's based on doing it because it's a good deed, they run out of it quickly. Now we're at the point where Michael and I, my husband and I, have acknowledged that our friends on levels are also going to end up being Savannah's friends. It's a hard thing, but we look at people who are mature where we can have the conversation and say, if we are going to hang out together and you want to talk about X, Y, and Z, she can't be there because she doesn't need to know that. So if you are also her friend, then you need to come a little bit early, make time to have a cup of tea with her or have a swim with her, whatever. I'll get her ready for whatever you decide, but do that with her. And then I can say to Savannah, now it's private time, private conversations for me and this person. And it's working. It is not easy for me sometimes because I'm like any other lady. When I see my girlfriends, I want to yak and tell them the thing quickly. And I don't want Savannah to be there. So I also have to take deep breaths and realize she doesn't have the option. I say this to parents when I run support groups. Our kids are not attending a support group. Carla, I wonder if you are attending a support group to talk about your ridiculous parents. I mean, do you get to do that? No.
Unfortunately not, but we have a caregiver, and those two can skinner about mom being difficult or stupid at times. So
yes, yeah. So that's it. That's so yeah, John. I think that's an option. I think if you can rather pay somebody, you can train them, and it doesn't. My girl, my Savannah, can only handle people like 2 or 3 days a week now. There was a point where it was only like maybe 1 or 2 days a week. Her anxiety would be so much. Now she's down to 2 or 3 days, and she's getting better at it. So maybe just once in a while, if you can do that. Fatima, that's also a nice option, for you to see if there's a young man that's an au pair that can come in and just sit on the couch and watch that movie. That's where the relationship, it looks like they're doing nothing, but actually social closeness without words is a wonderful gift to give our children. So something to consider. Okay, so we've got 8 minutes left.
Thank you so much, Desirae.
Pleasure, John. Any last comments from you, John?
No, I'm good, Desirae. It's been a journey, and Lauren's been fortunate to have a great scaffolding. So we're kind of revisiting some areas and realizing we were not as diligent in terms of maintaining and continuing them. So this is a great session to kind of just give us a bit of a re-energizer of what we needed to do, what we can do, and what we should be doing more of.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Fatima, for you?
I'm in awe of this session. I'm so excited. I can't wait for my husband to be home so that I can tell him everything. Actually, I didn't even say to him, look, I'm going to be, because you know how it goes in the morning. Guys, thank you so much for the insight. I've learned so much from both Marlene and John and you today. Endless. There is, it's an open book, and I've learned so much from you guys, and for this, and absolutely about the social skills. We actually take Desirae out once a week. We do family time, so we've got about, I think it's probably about 20 people in but it's a big place, so he's got that social interaction, so we kind of do that once a week, sometimes twice a week, and he's open for it. So maybe we should do a bit more. Definitely. Thank you so much for that insight. I really thank you for the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Fatima. Marlene and Carla?
Yes, this was a very valuable. It's nice to hear. Well, nice. I would use the word nice to hear that there are other parents. Sometimes you feel so alone and so like an island, and you don't think that there are parents that sort of go through the same problems and social disadvantages like you do. The one thing that I might share with you guys is through the process of we did all the courses and the stimulation and whatever, and I mean at one time our days 24 hours a day revolved around Carla and the care of Carla. So all I wanted to say to the parents sometime is remember that you as a mother of a special needs child has a life too. And it's okay to take a day off and get someone else to step in for you and just get away from constantly worrying, constantly teaching, constantly, doing what you have to do for your child. I got to the point that there was nothing more I could give, and it's tiresome. It's really tiresome. And I stepped away for a weekend, and it was amazing. So my 2 cents or 5 cents worth is just remember that you as a person, you as a mother or a father or even a friend of a person that has got disabilities has a life too. Don't give everything you have to that child. Yes, we want to, and we're supposed to, and we feel bad if we don't, but take some time. They say you can't give from a cup that's empty. You can spill over, but you can't give from a cup that's completely empty. So that's my 5 cents worth, but it was amazing. Yeah, and I would love to keep in touch. I hope all the parents here are part of the parent support group so that we can keep in touch. I would love to. And thank you for this. I think we learned, Carla and I learned a lot again today, seeing disability through other parents' eyes, and that's a wonderful thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marlene. And when Carla is on her device again, is she able to maybe send us just her thoughts, and I will distribute it to Fatima and John?
Absolutely. If you can send maybe on the parent group, or I think you have my number, just
Yes.
send me an email so we can do the video clip for you where she uses her IIC device, and then she can send it to you.
Thank you. We'd love to hear her thoughts, having to have listened to us for the last hour and a half. So as an actually disabled person, it would be great to hear that. I just want to say, parents, I do use the word disabled, disability, special needs, people with disabilities, all of that, just because I talk in so many different communities and everybody's got their own special thing, and I can never remember who wants what. So from the World Health Organization point of view, they use disabilities. And that's, if you're going to have a medical exam and you use that word, that's when you get the concessions. So that's the preferable word that I use, so there's no confusion. And then touching on what Marlene said, that's really important, that we look after ourselves. And one of the greatest lessons of looking after ourselves is that we bring a new energy to our children, that when we go out and enjoy something, I can come back and tell Savannah about it, even though she may not want to go out. And Fatima, Savannah was non-verbal, non-speaking, disengaged, did not even look at me, did not even look at any of the pictures I presented to her, or there was no joint attention, none of those things when she was very little. So I didn't believe that she would communicate. When I was presented with all of this, I thought, this is nonsense. She's never going to do it. It's too hard for her. And today, she has the most fascinating ideas and words. She actually has done a video for Josie for Autism, talking about what it's like to be a person who is autistic. She has intellectual disability. She has a lot of different things. She tells me that I must describe her as a person as she's an autistic woman with cerebral palsy and other stuff. And she's, even in her own way, able to change the world. So I just want to encourage you with that. And going away, looking after your relationships with your other children, with your spouse, is really important, because we are going to age and we need people with us. And if we go before our kids, we need to leave behind a community for them. So it's really, really important. I went away 2 weeks ago, I went on a retreat, a spiritual retreat for 6 days. And before I went, I do all of Savannah's therapy, and she's quite bent forward. She's in a flex position, and it's going to hurt her organs. And I was saying to Savannah, you have got to now start doing this by yourself, because all she has to do is put a pillow or a ball under her tummy and lie on a floor. That's just one simple exercise that the more frequently she does that, the better for her. But if I don't do it with her, she doesn't want to do it. And she asked me why. And I had a moment where I could have lied to her and said, just because I said so, because I'm your mom. I said, because if you don't stretch, your organs are going to all compress because you are hunching more and you're going to get sick. And she says, oh, why? And I said, if you get sick, Savannah, you go into hospital. And she says, oh, and she says, me die. And I said, yes, that could happen. Your organs could get too. And she said, oh, okay. So I went off, didn't think anything more of it. And every day I phoned home, my husband said, Savannah's doing her stretches. I could have fallen off the couch. And sometimes what happens is, by being around our kids so much, we actually don't give them the opportunity to realize their own innate ability to figure something out. I see John pointing to himself. So parents, I hope that, sorry, Marlene.
And now I was saying, Carla was laughing because it's exactly that. You're describing me. Yeah. So I agree with John 100% and you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fatima, did you want to say something?
No, I'm giggling to myself here and I'm like, guys, this is absolutely true.
So aside of all of these other things I do parent support and all of that. I'm also an assistive technology advisor in the field of AAC. And currently I'm helping the one company, Inclusive Solutions. So they have all of the technology available. So if Carla already has a system, but John, if you would like to have an assessment for Lauren, we can do that. If you come to the office, it's free, it's in Bedford View, and we can look at some ideas. I can show you some options. And then Fatima, I'm going to send you some links. I know people down in the Cape who are doing augmentative and alternative communication, and that would be helpful to you. And then I put some links in the comments. If you could please copy that. There's a link right at the top, a YouTube video. If you scroll all the way to 848, so if you could copy that one, and then there's 3 other links after that to the last 3 links in this conversation. Please copy those, have a look, think about it, and then we can catch up another time. You all have my email, I assume. If you don't, I'll send out an email on Wednesday. But thank you for your time. Thank you, John. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Marlene. And have an awesome December. Take time out for yourselves. Your children will love you for it.
Thank you very much. Nice.
Thank you so much, Desirae, and such a pleasure meeting the other ladies as well.
Yes.
Nice being the only thorn amongst the roses.
Yes. It's nice to have dads. We don't always have dads. So thank you for being here.
Amen. Thank you.
Okay. Go well, everybody. Have a great Saturday.
Thank you. You too.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.